Hello again. So we are going to talk about the Phillips curve today. Yay! Okay, so what is the Phillips curve? Why does it matter? The Phillips curve was created by William Phillips, which hence the name Phillips curve. So it is describing the relationship between inflation, which is on the y-axis, in relation to unemployment, which is on the x-axis. So let's talk about this and why it matters and how it applies. So let's go over this. So this is just a very basic hypothetical. So if inflation is low, let's say it's at 1%, then if we go along this line on the x-axis, we will find that unemployment is at 7%. Okay, again, this is all hypothetical. Just for example's sake, but it shows you how it moves along this curve. If inflation was at a higher percentage, let's say at 5, then we see that unemployment would be at equilibrium at 3 in the economy. So it's really a basic idea if you look at it. And the concept is pretty simple. It's what's called an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment, meaning that they're just basically opposites of each other. So if you have high inflation, you will have low unemployment. If you have low inflation, you will have high unemployment. Makes sense, okay? Very simple idea. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of it because you really don't need to know the nitty-gritty details of it to understand how that works and how that really applies in the US economy. So, so do we actually see this in the real economy? Yes, we do. So this is not just theory, and it makes sense that you would see this. So if you have high inflation rates, that usually means that there's high demand for goods and services, which is why the prices are being pushed up, and hence inflation then manifests in the US economy. So if there's high demand for goods and services, and that means the economy is doing well, that usually means the economy is expanding, which then logic stands to reason that there would be a lower unemployment rate because businesses need to hire more employees to keep up with the demand of goods and services. So that makes sense. And likewise, on the low end, if the inflation rate is low, then that usually means that there isn't a high demand for goods and services, which usually mean that the employers and businesses, they're not expanding, they're not hiring, and so unemployment rate tends to be higher. So this makes sense. This makes pretty simple sense. If the economy is expanding, then we usually have presence of inflation and more demand for jobs, and more demand for employees. And so unemployment's pretty low. So again, very simple concept. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but the reason we're talking about the Phillips curve is because right now we're not quite seeing this hold true in the US economy. This is where it's a little worrisome. So the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell went in front of Congress today and gave a little testimony and had a hearing, which is normal. It's a formality. This isn't anything new. And so they, in this hearing, in this testimony that he gave, he stated that the U.S. Labor market it's doing really well. It's doing what it should. But then he goes on to say that the inflation rate, however, is slightly lower than what they're targeting. So the Federal Reserve, if you've watched any of my other videos, their target for inflation is always 2%. And it's currently tracking at 1.6. Now, it doesn't seem like that's a big, difference because it's 40 basis points, or 0.40%. So it doesn't seem large, but when you're talking about inflation on such a mass level, that's a pretty significant difference between your goal and what it actually is. And so we're not seeing the Phillips curve actually play out, which we normally do see this in the US economy. This is a normal pattern that we experience. And traditionally we do experience it, but right now we're not. And so there's this cause for concern because of it, because now the economy is not moving the way we would anticipate for it to move. And if you've been watching any of my other videos, I talk about the Federal Reserve and what they've done with quantitative easing having a big impact on the US economy. And I still believe that that is what's causing this for our economy not to move quite the way it normally has in the past, because there's this artificial amount of money that was pumped in that is playing a role in the US economy that normally hadn't played a role in the past. And so now we're starting to see weird trends that we had not seen before. And so hence the big long bull run. We are seeing the inflation rate be a little bit lower, but unemployment is one of the lowest we've had in a long time. And so the unemployment rate is doing very well. And, you know, there's lots of demand for in the economy for new hires. And so that's a good thing. That means the economy is doing well, it's expanding, but we're starting to see that inflation is not keeping up with that. And there's been some slowdown in some of the business investments in the economy that we normally wouldn't see with such a high employment rate or such a low unemployment rate. So this is cause for concern because we're not seeing the markets, or I'm sorry, the economy move like we normally would see it move. Now, in his testimony today, oh my goodness, people are reading into what Jerome Powell said like crazy. So in his testimony, at no point did he say he was going to cut interest rates. Almost no chair makes that decision or ever discusses that openly in the media. Like that just doesn't happen. That is a very thought out and very kind of closed door conversation that happens between the Federal Reserve board members and the chair, and then they make an announcement. So at no point did he ever say that he was going to cut the interest rates. At no point did he even say that he was going to be, at least in the testimony section, no point did he say he was going to be accommodating. All he said was that we're watching this. There's been some, indicators that we're keeping a closer eye on. Inflation is not where we want it to be, and we'll just make adjustments as necessary. Again, at no point did he even come close to saying he was going to cut the rate. If anything, he will probably just hold the rate where it is. He's very hawkish, which means that, so again, if you've ever watched my videos, I've talked about this before. Hawkish means that they're very aggressive. Dovish means that they're very docile. They want to be more reactionary than to the markets than trying to force a change in, I'm sorry, not in the markets, in the economy. They're more reactionary to the economic information rather than trying to force economic activity to occur by adjusting the rates. And so there's a very big difference between those two styles. And Jerome Powell has made it very clear he is going to be much more aggressive. He's going to be much more hawkish in his approach, which is why the interest rates have moved up as quickly as they have last year. And then we're really not seeing really any interest rate movements this year. And so, at least for the time being. So I would venture to guess that he is going to just hold the position. If he cuts the rates, I will be very, very, very surprised. And I will be very, very wrong. But I'm going to say that he is going to probably just hold the line because there is no indication for a need to cut. Now, there is indication to hold the line, but not to, hold the current rate where it's at, but not to cut it, especially with unemployment numbers as being strong as they are. If we were to cut that rate, the federal funds rate, we're going to see some weird movement that I don't think we're ready for, to be honest. So I think he just wants to hold it because he would like to see more leeway in the Federal Reserve open market operations, and so he would like to push that up higher. But because there are some indicators that are kind of not in line with what we would normally see with this type of unemployment numbers, then I think he's just going to hold it and see, kind of where everything goes before he decides to move the interest rate up. And I still think that he will probably move it 1 minimum this year, 2 maximum. It's looking more closer to like he's going to at least, probably do a 1 interest rate movement. And I would be surprised if it's down instead of up. So, but that's where it's at for right now. But just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that. If you haven't read the testimony from Jerome Powell today, it's a quick read. I would highly suggest that you just go on the Federal Reserve website, and it's there. It's, of course, all public information. It's a public record. And it's a short read, but there were some very, very fascinating things in there. And not just fascinating to, geeky economists, but there's trends in there that he talks about that you're like, why is that happening? So I won't spoil that for you. You guys can go ahead and read it. But it is a really quick and really informative read to go through. So anyways, that's it for today. Just wanted to go over that information and give a quick economic update. Again, as far as all the other indicators show, things are doing well. Oil prices have been going down, as you know, because there's been lots of turmoil on that. I'll do another video on that soon. But anyways, as always, if you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below and share with your friends. I feel like it's important that people be aware of what's going on and have at least a little bit of understanding of their own economy, because this is important. What the U.S. economy does affects the markets, and what the markets do with the stock markets, they affect your retirement and your investments. So you should be aware of what's happening, because ultimately it's affecting your money. And it's just good information to know and to just be a, kind of an aware citizen. So anyways, I will talk with you guys later.